Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Buns. Welcome to the Legion class overview for Paladin. Now, Paladin, going into this expansion, the one spec in particular that a lot of people in PvP were looking at as the biggest change to any class almost is that Holy Paladins got a serious revamp. And they're still one of the top healers, if not the best healer, but they got a serious revamp. They have a two-handed weapon now. They're up in people's faces, doing damage, also healing. Similar to this new Disc Priest playstyle where you do damage to heal. Very similar. A little bit different because it's a Paladin versus a Priest, so you're doing more instant casts, auto attack abilities, melee attack abilities versus like spells as a Disc Priest. But it's the same concept. We'll break into that today. And also, Rhett and Prot have the similar builds and similar what to expect, but I also think at the same time that Prot Paladin probably got a pretty big buff and is going to be more viewed in PvP than I think it was before in the past. So, getting right into it, we'll start with the healing spec because I think that's what people are looking forward to the most and got the most significant changes. So, the biggest thing out of everything that really defines the Paladin playstyle really starts off with their mastery, and their mastery is Lightbringer. So, how Lightbringer works is your proximity to the target causes your spells to heal for up to 25% more. So, to give you an idea about that, let's say you're about 40 yards away from a target, right? And I'm healing her for about, 100k, non-crits, but then I'm going to walk up to about, on top of her 10 yards away, and it should be healing for about 125k, right around there. And that's exactly how it works. So, basically, the effect of your mastery is linear based on yardage. So if you're 40 yards away, it's going to be you're going to get zero benefit from your mastery. The closer you get to your target, up to 10 yards, you're going to benefit from the whole 25%. So if I'm standing here, it's 125%. Or excuse me, yeah, 25%, which is really 125%. If I'm about halfway, it should be hitting for about 115, and then if I go all the way back, it should be hitting for about 100k. So, just to give you an idea, that's kind of how it works, which I looked up a little bit because I was curious about because I didn't think the talent was very specific on the wording, so I went and looked up how it worked out, and it's a linear percentage based on where you are standing from 40 yards to 10 yard range. So hopefully that helps you guys out there. Now, with Holy Paladin, what they ended up changing, as I mentioned earlier, is they made it much more melee specific. So just based off of the passive and your mastery itself, you want to be closer to your targets to be doing more healing. And with that as well too, they've kind of forced you to come up and start doing damage to your opponents, which I think is kind of interesting. It's very weird because Holy Paladin last expansion, from what I remember, was very different than that. It was very hug pillars, you had to lock them on cast. Well, you're not even casting a ton as much as a Holy Paladin now. But going through some of your new abilities now that you have on Holy Paladin, you have Crusader Strike, which you get 2 charges of. That does, like 80k damage about. You have Holy Shock, which does about 100k damage, or heals a target for about 85k damage, and it has double the normal crit chance. And when you do crit with Holy Shock, which let's see if we can get one there. Oh no, we did not. So, but looking at the passive for it, when you do crit with your Holy Shock, it reduces the cast time of your next Holy Light by 1.5 seconds. And your Holy Light is your heal, your longer heal for about 2.4 seconds, but it's more mana efficient. And then your Flash Heal is your fast casted heal. They do about the same healing, just it's less mana efficient. Faster heal, less mana efficient. So with your Holy Light, what it does is when you crit with your Holy Shock, it reduces your cast time of your Holy Light here, which you can see it's less than a second, which is nice if you need to get a fast heal off, and it's efficient. And your Flash Heal, what it does is it increases the amount your Flash heals by 50%. Which is nice. So you have some choices there, whether you want to get a more bursty heal off or you want to get something fast and efficient. So I think that's kind of cool to the talent as well too. You also have Judgment as well too, which can do damage, and it also increases the amount of damage you do by your Holy Shock and your Crusader Strike. So you want to make sure you're using your Judgment before anything else. Now, I also went into a build that I tried a lot of different builds on my Holy Paladin. I felt like that there was a lot that you could go into. What I ended up enjoying the most was this build that revolved around your shorter cooldowns, like Crusader Strike, Holy Shock, Light of Dawn. Oh, so Light of Dawn is another ability as well too, I'll get into here. So, Light of Dawn is like, it's this, and what it is like, the spell I can relate it to the best, it's like a cone of cold that heals. So basically, unleash the wave of holy energy, healing up to 5 injured allies within a 19-yard frontal cone for 54,000 damage. And I went into a lot of talents to kind of combo between Light of Dawn, Holy Shock, Crusader Strike, and Judgment. You definitely don't have to go this build. I just ended up going that route. There's some other great talents as well too, like Bestow Faith, which I was playing with earlier, and Holy Prism. And those are fine. Those are great abilities as well too as Holy Avenger. I just went with this like short cooldown route. So, some of the benefits of going on the short cooldown route: when you use your Crusader Strike, it refreshes the cooldown of your Holy Shock and your Light of Dawn by 1.5 seconds. So, you know, you're healing people up, you're using your abilities, using a Holy Shock, get free heals. You can use your Crusader Strike, and look at that, your Holy Shock's already coming off cooldown, your Light of Dawn's coming off cooldown. It's just very refreshing, to be punny. But that's a good way to put it. It gives you a lot of uptime, it feels like you have high usage, and especially considering you're going to be up in people's faces doing damage a lot of the time, I think it's nice. It's a nice build if you want to have consistency to it. So, I ended up going that route. And another talent that you get later down the line too is your Light of Dawn and Holy Shock have a 15% chance to not start their cooldown and make their next cast free. So basically, if I use Holy Shock or Light of the Dawn and it ends up proccing, you have a 15% chance of getting a free proc basically, and they're already instant cast in the first place, so helps out. It's a good rotation. It's just nice to have fast abilities up really quickly. There's also a lot of CD talents that you can end up going into. I chose the one that's Fist of Justice, and basically Fist of Justice, and this is available, I believe, as all specs. When you use your Hammer of Justice, your Judgment has a it refreshes the cooldown by 10 seconds. So I'll use my Hammer of Justice, which is on a minute cooldown, and then I'll use Judgment after that. It takes 10 seconds off the cooldown. So you can get your Hodges back pretty quickly if you rotate that way. But you can also go with Repentance, but it's, you know, it's got a 15-second cooldown. Still good in a lot of situations if you need that in cap. And you can go Blinding Light as well too if you want to combo it that way with having a Disorient. And you can do holy damage to it while they're in the Disorient, which I think is kind of cool. But I don't know how much you'll be using that in like PvP specifically, just because other people would be doing damage into it as well too. If you're gonna take that talent, to me it seems like people would just not be hitting that target, which is fine. You can go that route too, but I think that maybe you would just choose Repentance at that point. But it is available. Now, some of your bigger cooldowns that you have as well too is you have Avenging Wrath. And Avenging Wrath increases your healing done by 35%, your critical strike chance by 20%, and reduces the cooldown of your Holy Shock by 50%. So you can see where going this build that I ended up going, where I have the short cooldowns on Holy Wrath, Holy Shock and Light of the Dawn, and then on top of that it really combos with my big cooldown there, Avenging Wrath. So if I use that and then I use Holy Shock, you can see how quickly it ends up refreshing. It's already off cooldown after you use a Crusader Strike. It's already off again. So there's some really big cool combo stuff that you can do, I think, that makes it quite entertaining, at least. I don't play Holy Paladin myself, but I felt like it was very fun to be able to have the cooldowns coming off very quickly. So I think for like a consistency playstyle, I think that this would be a very fun build to go. And finally, I guess, looking at some of the honor talents as well too, there's some really cool honor talents, and especially in your mobility tree, I ended up going with the Blessing of Freedom for now, but there's also some really cool ones with your Dispel. And when you dispel an ally within your aura, all allies within your aura are dispelled of the same effect. Now, so let's say for instance that, you know, someone puts a Nova on your 2 melee, right? And you dispel the Nova and they're both standing in your aura, well, they all get dispelled, even yourself included, which I think is pretty cool. So I think that there's some usage to that as well too. And then you also have a talent that increases your aura by 30 yards. The aura that I ended up going with was Devotion Aura, and reduces all damage taken by 10%, but it splits it with your allies as well too if they're standing within that range. And if you use your Aura Mastery, which is a pretty big cooldown that you have, it extends that range to 40 yards, and everyone within that range gets the full benefit of the aura. So everyone will be taking the damage reduction, which I think is really helpful. I think it's a good cooldown. I liked it. I ended up going with that one. You can kind of try your own builds. I think with Paladin that there's going to be a lot of different options that you can go with. I just went with this fast cooldown rotation. It felt really fun, especially when I was just hitting the target dummies and messing around with it too. It was just fun, felt efficient. I had a good time with it. But going into the next spec here is Prop Paladin. So with Prop Paladin, I think that Prop Paladin got a lot better for PvP situations. And with Prop Paladin as well too, there's a lot of different routes you can go with your talent trees depending on what you want to do. But I'll just kind of explain some of the main abilities that you get right off the bat. So you have Hammer of Righteousness. And hammers the target current damage for 31k physical damage, and while you're standing in your consecration, Hammer of the Righteousness also causes a wave of light that hits all the targets within 8 yards for about 20k damage. And there's a lot of abilities that you have when you're standing in your consecration that are going to get extra benefits for being in it, which is kind of nice. Also, your Shield of Righteousness as well too gets benefits for standing in the consecration. I don't know why there's a tooltip bug. I was reading that again this morning, but I was actually getting about 20% last night. I'm not sure what was up with that. So I'm not sure if they made a change to that overnight or something like that, or maybe I spec'd into a talent that I didn't recognize, but it was also getting benefits from your Shield of Righteousness. So basically your Paladin has a lot of damage now, so I'll kind of go outside and show you guys some of the numbers so you guys can get a feel for it. And your Judgment is available in all different specs as well too. It just does something a little bit different for each one. So as a prop Paladin, what your Judgment does is it reduces the remaining cooldown on your Shield of Righteous by 1 second, or 2 seconds if it's a critical strike. So one ability that one talent that I want to show you guys before I actually go into this that I chose, I think it's this one right here. Let's see if we can find it. Here we go. It's the first row. I had to find it. I thought it was either the first or the second row. So I chose a talent in the first row that makes my Hammer of Righteous have no cooldown, so it's basically spammable. And that's the ability that I read to you guys right off of the bat. And I like that because it feels like you have a lot of uptime. And your Hammer of Righteousness also has a chance to reset the cooldown of your Avenger Shield. I think it's in your passive right here. Let me see if I can find it. I think it's Grand Crusader. Yeah. Which is nice. So, considering you have a spammable ability that resets your biggest damaging cooldown, which is Avenger Shield, which I took an Honor talent into as well too, to make do a little bit more damage. Oh no, excuse me, the first Avenger. So, I took a talent that makes my Avenger Shield only hit one target, which I think is better for PvP. Does 50% more damage, but it only hits one target now. But I think it's very helpful, and it also buffs the chance that you get it to get a free proc from your Grand Crusader by about 7%. Which is pretty nice. So you refresh it pretty often. So kind of what you're doing on a Paladin is you can get your Judgment up, do some consistent damage as well too with your Shield of Righteousness, which also gives you a tanking debuff if you're taking damage as well too, which is kind of nice, gives you some utility there. And you just spam your Hammer of Righteousness, and you can see I get free procs of Avenger Shield. Just toss that into them, do pretty good damage. It's pretty consistent, and I think that that's really important. But on top of that too, there's a lot of burst that comes available as well. And just using your Judgment off cooldown to refresh your Hammer of Righteous, you have some pretty good damage. Now, your artifact weapon for prop Paladin as well too is really good. And what it does is it does 90k damage to all enemies nearby you, but it reduces how much damage they do to you by 25%, which is pretty nice. So if you go and spam that, if you're taking a lot of damage as well too, it's only like a minute cooldown. So I think it's a really nice short cooldown to have as prop Paladin, to be able to do some good damage, but also reduce how much damage you're taking. And I think that prop Paladin is not going to be doing like that much. I don't think it's overwhelming damage, but I think that if you combo it with another DPS, it can do well. There's a few Honor talents I think you're going to have to go into to make it viable though. And one of those is the Shield of Virtue. Now, maybe if you feel like you have enough interrupts on your team, you don't have to go this route. But basically what Shield of Virtue does is it makes your Avenger Shield interrupt and silence all enemies within 8 yards. Right now, Avenger Shield doesn't actually silence or interrupt people. They have to be non-target players, which is kind of a bummer. That's a pretty big change. But they do let you go into the Honor talent and choose something that allows you every 25 seconds to be able to have that effect from it. So it is available. Right now, I'm going with a talent that just increases the amount of damage by my Shield of Righteousness, and it reduces the cooldown effect, or of the damage reduction effect by 10%, which it feels like I'm not taking that much damage when I was messing around with it, but you can go that route if you just want to do straight damage. I was just messing around in Battlegrounds, so you can absolutely go that route, but if you want to have some more CC, you'll probably have to go with Shield of the Virtue. That's pretty much a general overview for prop Paladin. Some of the big cooldowns that you have left is you have your Avenging Wrath, which just increases your damage and healing by 35%. You also have your Ardent Defender, which reduces the damage you take by 20%, and an attack that would have killed you when you have Ardent Defender up will take you to 12% health. So basically if you were going to get executed and you pop that, it would take you up to 12% health and you wouldn't die from the execute. So a little bit of a breath, you know, if you need another second before your bubble comes up or for a heal to come out, you have that available to you, and it's a pretty short cooldown, which I think is pretty nice. And then you also have Guardian of the Ancient Kings, which empowers you with the Ancient Kings, reducing all the damage that you take by 50%. Pretty good. But it's a long cooldown, so you gotta be careful when you use that one. So basically, Prot Paladin, I think the damage went up. It's just that it's very spammy. Like, you can just see my bars. I don't have that many buttons to hit. Very spammy, very consistent. And I think that with another, like, melee DPS, I think that it could actually do pretty well. But I'm not sure that it would do that well with anything else. I think that you have to be training and having a lot of pressure. And the Prot Paladin will kind of be there for that consistent pressure and be an annoyance and have, like, high time on target. You also have good utility as well, too, with Bops and your Blessing of Freedoms to help get your people and teammates on top of the target as well, too. Another reason why I think it's good for melee. Then finally, we have a Ret Paladin. Now, Ret Paladin's always been a class that, right now, from playing a lot of arenas recently, Ret Paladin gives me a really hard time in 1v1s, but I don't know how good it actually is in 3s right now. In 1v1s, it's really tanky. You have so much survivability, because the thing is, with all the specs of Paladin, is that you have an option in your honor talents to choose your double blessings, which is really OP. And basically what your double blessings do is you get 2 bops and 2 freedoms, which is pretty strong. I think you get it as Prot and you get it as Holy Paladin. And then when you're playing as a Red Paladin, you have your, you have a Blessing Protection, you have Lay on Hands. You're just really tanky, and on top of that you have a shield. So in a 2v2 scenario, it's really good if you're playing with another DPS. I felt playing against it a lot of the time, it's really overwhelming because you can't, it feels that you can't kill the Ret Paladin, but you can't kill his partner either, because he can just bop him and has so many cooldowns to help him out, or he can shield himself and start healing his partner. So it's a really big nuisance to deal with. Now, going into some of the cooldowns that you use on a more consistent basis, once again, you have Judgment. It just does a different effect. Your Judgment causes them to take 25% increased damage from your Holy Power spenders for 8 seconds. So your Holy Power spenders, so that would be your VT, your Templar's Verdict, your Execution Sentence, and your Justicar's Vengeance, which are some talents that I spec'd into as well with the build that I went. So you also have Crusader Strike as well too, which is your consistent damage and gives you 1 Holy Power per. Your Blade of Justice, does 130k physical damage. The thing that's really OP about that is I ended up going into a talent called Virtue's Blade, and when your Blade of Justice crits, it does 3 times the normal damage, which I think is crazy. I think it's probably the best talent in this row. There's some other abilities if you want to take them. I just felt that this one was so strong. Just being able to have that burst, I think, is really important. And then as well, too, it does your... Let me see if I can find it here. Your Templar's Verdict is a 3 Holy Power spender, and it does 120k holy damage. So it's like you have 5 Holy Power to mess around with. So if I go outside and mess around with some targets here, you have 5 Holy Power to spend with. So if you want to do a little bit more consistent pressure, you can get your Holy Power up, go with 3, go with the Templar's Verdict, as I actually legitimately just took it off my bars. Well, doing a good job there. There we go. So you can take that, or you can go all the way. I ended up using an ability called Justicar's Vengeance, and when the target is stunned, they take 100% extra damage and 100% extra healing. So how the ability works is normally you do about 180k damage, and it does that much damage, but it also heals you for that much. But when you stun the target, it does double that. So if I charge everything up, use a Hodge on the target, and then I use the ability, it does quite a lot of damage. I just realized I used that into a raid target and he can't be stunned. So that's awkward. But it does double the damage and double the healing, which I felt was really consistent and nice too. Your artifact weapon is really nice too, so I'll read you guys the tooltip as well. It does about 140k damage to all targets within 12 yards in front of you, but it also puts a dot on them for the next 6 seconds that does about 150k damage, and it reduces the movement speed that they do, which I think is really nice as well too. So if I use it right now, you can see it hits both targets for 140k, and the dot is on both targets. So it actually does both effects to both players, which is pretty good. And it's not the longest cooldown in the world. It's 30 seconds, so it fits into your rotation really well, and it gives you 5 Holy Power, so you can throw out another Justicar's Vengeance. Finally, one of the last abilities that I took as my Ret Paladin was Execution Sentence. I think it lands up very nicely with your Hodge, and if you want to do burst damage, so you could put someone into a Hodge, get full holy power, Hodge them, use Execution Sentence. You probably want to use your Execution Sentence before the Hodge actually goes off, so you can time it with it, and then use your Justicar's Vengeance while they're at the end of it to do huge burst damage. I think it can be a lot of fun. I think that Ret will probably be really strong in 2s and 1v1s. I'm not sure how it will do in 3s. I feel like Ret Paladin's always one of those specs where I'm not sure, and to me, honest to God, it feels like Prop Paladin might just be better. Even though you have less buttons to hit, it feels like the consistency's there, and especially with Prop Paladin as well too, you feel so tanky that it makes you not a target, where I feel like in 3v3 scenario, that a Ret Paladin becomes a lot more vulnerable to being a target, where in 2s, they have a lot of cooldowns to go through between their bubbles and bops and freedoms. Your blessings don't mean as much in a 3v3 because there's an extra player there, and you can just deal with people better when you have more CC. You have options depending on what class you're playing to get rid of the blessings as well too. So that's my overall take on Paladins. Holy Paladin obviously got a huge change having the two-handed weapon. I honestly probably had the most fun playing that out of all 3 of the specs, and I think that for people that are going to want to play a strong healer, that's going to be the choice that you're going to go with, on top of Resto Shamans. I think that those are 2 of the best healers right now, but I think that Holy Paladin has a really high skill cap, and I think that you're going to have to be a really good player to be able to manage bouncing in and out, doing damage, and also watching your positioning as well too, not only to watch out for CC, but to maximize how much healing you are doing. I think there's a really high skill cap to Holy Paladin, so it's a little bit overwhelming for me, for someone that probably doesn't play healers at all, so a little bit much for me personally, but it does look really fun, so I'm excited about that. And Prop Paladin, I think, will find its way into 3s, believe it or not. It's not as strong as it was maybe 2 months ago on beta, but I think that it could find its way into a 3s comp with another class that does a lot of damage, say like maybe a DK, a Demon Hunter, or a Combat Rogue, something like that, just to put insane double melee pressure on. I can see it. Maybe Ret Paladin will do better than I think. I'm not sure how it's going to do in 3s. That's a big question mark for me. I think that that's a big question mark for a lot of people, so I'll be interested to see how it goes later into the expansion, to see where Paladins fall on the tree. Holy Paladin's going to be good for sure. The 2 DPS, Prod I think is going to be better than Ret, but we'll see. Maybe it'll end up being a different way. Anyways, guys, thank you for watching the video. Hope that gave you guys a little bit of an overview, so when you guys are trying to figure out what spec you go on your Paladin, you can kind of get a better feel for which way you want to go. Thank you for all the support. If you have any questions or you have something that I missed in the video that you were wondering about, let me know in the comments below. I will catch you guys later tonight with another video. Peace. Thank you for all the support, guys. Keep it easy, everyone.